Well, we're in the last week of the You Asked For It series. And the last week of this series, we are going to deal with a topic that I have absolutely zero qualification to talk to you about. We are going to talk about how you achieve balance in your life. I am habitually bad at this. Anybody else? Okay. Man, it is a struggle for me, and so God has really been doing some work on me, even in the process of thinking through this, about me, for me personally, about our ministry, about everything. God has really been pressing on some things. So I'm partially excited and partially not at all excited to get into this message, but we're going to do it nonetheless. So if you're with me, just everybody give me a good amen. Come on. Amen. All right. So first off, the thing that I realized is that change brings complexity. When things change, whether you change the church you go to, or you change the job that you have, or you make a change in your relationship, or suddenly you have a child, no matter what the change is, change brings complexity. We see this in the cycle of life. When you're born, you're a baby, things are pretty simple. You eat, drink, poop, pee. That's it. And you sleep. Like, that's as complicated as life is. And then when you start getting up and crawling and moving around, now you enter into a world of play. And when you enter the world of play, you've got to make decisions. You got to make decisions about what I'm going to play with, what I'm not going to play with, and am I going to share? I have no intention of sharing. Okay? Like, you got to make decisions. You got to fight through some of that stuff. And then you become a little bit older still, and you have more and more options. You get into grade school, and you get more and more options with sports and teachers and everything. And with every change, life gets more complex. We're here celebrating our graduates today. And these guys are in this really beautiful period of life where they're exiting high school and they go, "We're free! We made it!" So I just scared Marianne to death. She was looking down when I yelled. And so, but here's what happens. So this summer, they're going to really focus, we hope, on maybe two things. Like, they're going to focus, we hope, on their relationship with God. And they're going to focus on, God willing, a job. And so they're going to get a job, Morgan, and they're going to make sure she works great. She always did. So you got a job and you got God, and you go, "Man, this is going to be a great summer. This is all I got to worry about. I ain't got to worry about anything else. You got my relationship with God and my job." But it's not going to stay that way. Yeah. Because the season's going to kick in and college is going to start. And next thing you know, I got to go to classes. And as I go to classes, I think I've still got this. It's fine. Everything's good. But as I go to classes, it turns out these classes are much harder than they were in high school. And so I need to make some time to study. And so as I make time to study, I'm going to find out eventually that they're going to want to actually find out what I know. And I have tests. And these tests are more complicated than they once were. And as I get into those tests, I start to experience these things. And I go, "Man, this is hard. I've got tests. I got everything else." And then, guess what happens? I meet the one. And the one comes into my life. And the one takes up a lot of space in life. And so I got to deal with this person. Now we have to go on dates. And as we go on dates, it gets expensive. So I got to work a little bit more. And as I work more, I found out later in college I want to enjoy some other stuff in life. And so I got to join some organizations. But I'm kind of an overachiever, so I don't join one organization. I join like 4 organizations at the same time. And as I do, I start to realize I'm a great leader. And so I want to be a leader. But now I got meetings. I got meetings all the time. Sorry, sweetie. I got meetings all the time. And as I go through these meetings, I get more and more expectations. But then I graduate college. And guess what? It gets easier, right? No. We decide to get married. We have kids. And as we have kids, they have needs. And then we start joining all kinds of other organizations, and everything that we can imagine happens, and life gets unbalanced. Because with every change comes complexity. Does this resonate with you? Does this make sense to you at all? Did I lose this altogether? So what I want to do is, as we think about this, switch over to one of these dudes. There we go. When we start going through that, I'm tired already. I'm realizing I'm in shape. You get drained, don't you? We start to get physically drained. Any of you just have a life where you do so, even if you don't do physical stuff, you just do so many things that at the end of the day you just go, "I'm exhausted." And if you don't get that, maybe you get emotionally drained. I know this never happens to any of you, but have you ever been annoyed by everyone in your life? By the way, let me tell you something. If you've ever been annoyed by every single person in your world, you're the problem, okay? It's not them, it's you. Trust me. And so some of you are like, dang it, I didn't mean to say yes to that one. All right, so we get emotionally drained, and then we start to get spiritually drained. I'm physically tired. I don't want to connect with God. I don't get time for that. I need to get some extra sleep. I'm going to sleep in on Sunday, and my emotions are all out of whack, so I don't even feel like connecting with God or connecting with people. And next thing you know, I'm spiritually drained. And as much fun as it is to watch me try to catch all of these balls, the truth is that in the real world, it is not fun watching people be pushed to their limit. It's not exciting. Watching someone's marriage at the edge isn't fun. Watching someone's kid push the boundaries of morality into a place that's difficult and going to hurt their life, it's not fun. Watching your schedule get so filled up that at the end of the week you have to concentrate to think about whether or not you actually spent time with your children isn't fun. Getting your finances so much to the edge that when the bill that you didn't expect shows up, your life explodes is not fun. And here's the irony of our culture. We will always have this stance that we are too busy to become less busy. Think about that for a second. We live in a place where life swallows us up, but the truth is we don't have to live like that. What we want to create is something called margin. Now, there's a couple of definitions for margin. It's the available space beyond what is needed. You think about it like on the page. On a given page, you have a margin on the outside, or on a highway. On a highway, you have a shoulder out there. And so you have margin. You have an amount of space beyond what is needed. But the other definition of margin is that we have a space between our current reality and our limits. So here's what that looks like. And I'm not going to use this much, but hopefully you guys can see this. I'm going to use this black marker instead. So in any given thing in our life, let's say it's getting somewhere on time. Let's say now how many of you are on-time people? How many of you are not on-time people? I'm an on-time people, and I just want you to know, keep your hand up if you're not on time.
That's right.
Okay, if you are an on-time person, you hate all the people with their hands up. All right, so here we go. Let's say on time is 7 o'clock. Okay, so that is the limit. The limit is 7 o'clock. Now, if I arrive like any God-loving person at 6:45, I have left margin. If I arrive at 7:10, Fox family, if I arrive there, I have negative margin, okay? Because I have pushed beyond my limits. Now you would say, well, arriving somewhere on time, that doesn't get that dangerous. Well, what if you took the same thing and you applied it to your finances? This is how much we can afford each month. Or this is how much our we have available. Well, our bills came to this. So we have an available margin of income. But if I do what most people in America do and I spend 110% of my income, guess what? I land here and I'm living in negative margin because I'm 10% over. What we have to learn to create, if we're going to not have this overwhelming out of balance thing in our life, is we have to learn to create margin for the positive in our life. And it doesn't matter what this is. You can apply your schedule, apply anything to it. You've got to figure out how to make that work for you. Here's the thing though, when I say this, everybody goes, oh, I'd love to have that extra space. That would be wonderful. But the problem is, the moment your life gives you any extra space, do you know what we do with it? Fill it up. We're not good decision makers. The moment we find margin, we fill it up with something else. And so we need to learn some things, because when you live life without margin, some things happen. The first thing that happens if you're taking notes is stress goes up. So if you're running late to your 7 o'clock place, or excuse me, if you leave just in time to walk in the door at 7 o'clock to wherever you're going, what is inevitably going to happen to you along the way? Traffic, or you realize you got to get gas or something. And guess what? Had you left any margin? No, there's no margin for error. If you spend right up into the dollar that you make, and then something horrible happens, guess what? I'm now in debt, and I've gone beyond where I have the margin. Okay? And so when you do that, what increases in your life? If you're trying to get to this place at 7, all of a sudden you leave at 6:45 and it's a 15-minute drive and you run into traffic, the closer that this line gets to this, the higher stress goes up.
Amen.
The more you go, well, we can only afford this much money, and our expenses are slowly climbing beyond to that mark, and then beyond that mark. The closer I get to that, my stress level continues to rise. And without margin in our lives, do you know what we become? We become singularly focused. Now, a lot of people might think the opposite. They think, well, when you have so many different things going on in your life, you're focused on all of them. No. That's not how it works. Do you know that when you run out of margin in your life, when you become out of balance in your life, you become singularly focused, and you know what you focus on? You. The moment that you push all of the margin out of your life, you stop living any sort of life of ministry. Your capacity for others shrinks to nothing. Amen. And that's where you land. Not only does stress go up, but relationships suffer. Have you ever been out of balance and stressed out, and you zone out in conversations and you just kind of nod a whole lot and hope nobody asks you any questions to follow up? Some of you are doing it right now. Like, I get it. So it's cool. It happens all the time. Lack of margin destroys marriages. Without margin, you cannot possibly be the parent that God has called you to be. And we see this in Scripture. And there's a great leader in Scripture that I wanted to kind of bring up. And his name is Moses. Anybody ever heard of him? Okay, most of us have heard of Moses. Let me give you a summary of what's going on in Moses. When Moses first starts in life, it's easy to handle. He's got just one ball that's coming at him at a time. Hey, Moses, I want you to go be a great leader. I'm going to give you some plagues, but the plagues are going to come one at a time, and I'm going to spread them out. Great, no problem. I can be your guy for that. Okay, now I just need you to, all you need to focus on is get out of Egypt. Great. Okay, I got one ball to carry. And then go to the Red Sea. I just need you to part the Red Sea and walk across it. Great. Okay, I can handle that. It's one thing. I got it. When Moses really runs up against it, though, is he gets into the wilderness. As he gets in the wilderness, he realizes, I've got 1 million people with me, and I have to feed them. Not only to feed them, they're going to have to drink something. Not only do they have to drink something, they're going to come to me, ask me questions. They start coming to Moses and go, how do we connect with God? Now he's going to be their pastor and shepherd on top of their cafeteria. And then they said, well, what about property issues and animal issues, livestock issues? Who's going to address those? And Moses goes, well, I'll do it. And so he begins to address those things. And now, not only is he pastor, not only is he a cafeteria guy, but he's also the government. And he begins to do all these things. And what we find is that when he gets to Exodus chapter 17, he's hit his physical limitations. He's begun to physically suffer. And in chapter 18, something really cool happens. He hangs out with his father-in-law. And his father-in-law have this great meal, and they celebrate what God is doing. And it's a really cool, sweet moment. And the next day is bring your father-in-law to work day, which we ought to have. I just think that'd be a cool thing. And here's what happens in Exodus 18, 13 through 17. So all of the change has led to a diminished capacity, and we see this. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around with him from morning until evening with his father-in-law, and he saw all that Moses was doing for the people. And then he said, so there's some that I cut out here, like it goes through, if you read that whole chapter, everything that Moses is doing. And from the time he wakes up to the time that the sun expires and deep into the night, he is listening to every single need of the people. And Jethro, who's the father-in-law, finally says this: what you are doing is not good. Very simple, isn't it? What you're doing is not good. And so Moses is going to give us a few steps to kind of help with the balance in our life. And the first one is admit that it's a problem. In Exodus 18:18, it says, you and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. This is Jethro talking. He says, the work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. How many of you are that person? You've watched other people burn out do it, but you go, I can do it. That's me. I've watched guys in ministry that have just wrecked their life and lost their family over doing it in ministry, and then I would go, yeah, but I can handle it. No, I can't. That's what led to this fluctuation in my life. I went through straight up obesity in my 20s, to starving myself and running marathons in my 30s. My blood pressure through the roof, literally having a doctor looking at me and going, what job do you have? Your stress levels and all these like hormones in your body are so crazy out of whack. What do you do? This happened to me in Ohio before I moved here, and I'm looking at the guy going, Pastor? He's like, what? That's crazy. Listen, Listen, I can tell you one thing from my life that is very clear. We don't drift into good directions. You don't just get out there and start making all these bad choices and somehow drift into a good lane. It doesn't work that way. You've got to begin to make conscious decisions, and the first one is to admit you have a problem. Because what Jethro says is so true. You'll wear yourself out, but he doesn't stop there. He says, you'll wear out the people that are counting on you too. Amen. You'll wear everyone out. And I love Moses' response here, because Moses does not big time Jethro. He doesn't look at him and say, Jethro, appreciate it, buddy. Don't know if you know who I am. Moses. Okay? I am basically the Gandalf of the Bible story. I am the guy that parted the Red Sea. Jesus, God used me for all the plagues and everything. So, check yourself. Don't be telling me what to do. No, he doesn't do that at all. And you know what's cool about this? You know how old Moses is at this time? 80. He's 80 years old and he's going, no, I still can learn. And I love that. I love that idea and mentality, especially for leaders. You can ask Wes, some of our staff, one of the things I say here all the time is if you're a leader at Crossroads, if you're done learning, you're done leading. Amen. It's an awesome thing that he is humble and he admits there's a problem. At 80, he admits that he doesn't have the best strategy to move through the chaos. And so they go to number two. Number two is they set their priorities. See, Jethro had seen the org chart. The org chart looked like this. Can you guys throw that graphic up for me real quick? So you have the leader, Moses, and it says, well, who are we going to deal with about the agriculture? Who's the guy that does, that's Moses. What about construction issues? Moses. So Moses is that guy. Well, what if there's a death? Who's going to oversee that? Well, that's Moses. What about farming and food? That's Moses too. What if there's a justice issue? Somebody's wronged somebody. It's Moses. We got to get some serious immigration issues in our country. Like, what are we going to do with that? Moses. But we need fuel. Moses. See, Jethro had seen the org chart and he went, that is a bad idea. That's going to lead to bad places. In Exodus 18:19-20, it says, listen now to me and I'm going to give you some advice. And may God be with you. He says, you must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. He says, Moses, you need to focus on two things and quit doing a lot of the rest of this. You need to focus on intercession and teaching. You need to learn how to bring the people to God, and you need to learn how to bring God to the people. Those are your two priorities, and you need to figure out something else with the rest of this. He says, I want you to make your decision based on priority. Like, what am I going to get rid of? When we start thinking about what we're going to get rid of, we make decisions the bad way. What God is going to say is, make your decisions about how to create balance, how to create margin in your life by priority and not by proximity. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of us will have proximity issues. So sometimes I see this in teenagers. I see this in my son sometimes when Zach's like, and I love you, buddy. But Zach's like, hey, wait a minute. I've got to go. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to mow this yard. I got to do this. I got to do this homework. Ooh, Xbox. And they start playing. And you're like, wait a minute. You just said you had a ton of stuff to do, but you made the decision of what you would do by proximity, not priority. What's closest or most easily accessible may not be the thing you need to prioritize first in your life. And so you've got to focus on that. And so here's the question that Moses was asked by Jethro. Essentially is this, and I want you to think about it with your life, your family, your work, whatever your situation. What can I do in my role that no one else can do? And there's probably one or two things. With my role as a husband or a wife, with my role as a child, with my role in my ministry, with my role at my job, what is it that I can do in my role that no one else can do? You need to begin to set your priorities. And that leads off to number 3, hand off responsibility. We tend to think that if we do it all, it gets better. If you could run a video camera on my first major event at Crossroads, here was what it would look like. And I still struggle with this every single day. Is you would have watched Jason go to this place and I was going, I'm adding value to the situation. No, you know what I was adding? Stress. If you're jumping around trying to do it all, the only thing you add to the situation is stress for the rest of your people. Because you need to learn to hand some things away. Sorry, I lost my place. In Exodus 18, I want you to look at this. It says, but select capable men from all the people. Men who fear God. So you got to find the right kind of people. This is important. Not just anybody, but the right kind of people. Trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain. And appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times. Have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. They will make your load lighter because they will share it with you. So I want you to hear this. Please listen. The less you do, the more you enable others to accomplish. Now some of you goes, well, my issue is not organizational. My issue is life. My life is crazy and chaotic. It's just the way things are. Well, let me address that for you. Maybe it's not just a situation of restructuring something in your life. What you need to learn to do is the same thing Moses did in handing this off. Is there are some things that maybe you can't hand off, but it's a time in your life right now where you simply need to set them down. They're not the most important thing right now. I'm struggling with that with Crossroads right now because as God has blessed us as a church, there's like 10 things that I want us to be doing. But we're not doing them right now because we're not ready for it. And that's okay. Because God's given us a ton of stuff that we do need to be doing, and we're not doing them as good as we should. And so we're going to focus on getting better at those things, and then we'll move on once the right people are in place. And that can be difficult, but for some, what we need to learn to do is put some things down. Now, I'm going to give you a caveat to that. For some of you, that what you just heard was going to give you an excuse to do some very stupid things, okay? So first, put the right things down. Some of you are like, yes, I need to create more time. I know what I'll do. Stop sleeping. I'll sleep less. I'll cut it down to 3.5 hours a day. That's like saying, hey, I'm going to lose weight by cutting off my leg. You'll accomplish your goal, but it's not going to have really good long-term effect. It's not a good plan. And some of you go, like, here's what happens. You know what squeezes out of my life? I go, you know what? I need to create some margin. You know what I won't do? It's faster to eat garbage than it is to eat healthy. I'll just simply sacrifice healthy eating. I'll die faster, sure, but I'll create more time. Amen. It's a bad decision. It's a bad strategy. Don't cut those things. Don't go, you know what? I can free up all of Sunday morning. No. That's like cutting off a supply line to you. Don't cut the things that keep you alive for the right purpose. Okay? The other thing I'm not telling you is some of y'all are right now going, you know what? Of all the organizations and all the things that I'm a part of, Jason just told me here at the Crossroads this morning that I have the right to go. I'm going to write an email to all of them as soon as service is over and say, I quit. Listen, I didn't listen. It's like teaching high school students when they would go to their boyfriend or girlfriend and go, Jason told me that God said we should break up. And no, that's not what I'm telling you. Don't be using me as your excuse. Here's what I would tell you. If you're already a part of a bunch of stuff that you've committed to, here's what I would tell you is the Bible says, keep your oath even when it hurts. Amen. You need to keep the oath that you've already made. And you need to make minor adjustments now to make major adjustments later. Fulfill the season that God has you in because you made an oath to do it. And then maybe start to cut some things back. The fourth step that you're going to learn from Moses, and I love this, is that we have to let the gospel go deeper. For some of us, and this is kind of what's true for Crossroads right now, for some of us, like we have chaos in our life because of growth and newness. I would love to tell you that we expected, like right now, Memorial Day weekend, this would have been, 2 years ago, this would have been both services of people. And now we'll have more people in the second service by far than we do in the first service. That's just the trend that we've been seeing. 2 years ago, we didn't go, hey, here's the plan. Let's plan for organizational perfection after 2 years, and let's triple in size, and it's going to be awesome. No, that wasn't the plan. Our plan at the time was, hold on. That was the plan. Let's not die. Like that was the plan. And then we saw God bless. And so I get people that go, they walk in here, and we're in the middle of growth, and I go, look, if you're looking for a place that is organizationally, procedurally perfect, we're probably not the place for you. But if you're looking for a place that you have patience to help us figure out a lot of our flaws, stick around. Because God's doing something amazing. Some of you, the chaos in your life comes from growth and exciting moments that are being created in your life. But you see an end. You see a light at the end of the tunnel where you're going to figure it out and things are going to calm back down. And that's one type of chaos. But here's the other type, and that's for some of you, and you know who you are. For others of you, it's not based on growth. You have a chronic lifestyle of chaos. And the reason that you do is because you are trying to fill a vacancy inside of yourself. Because to say you're busy makes you feel important. To say that you have no time on your schedule gives you a false sense of value. That is the struggle that some of you are in. And I love what Jethro says. Before he ever gives Moses any of his advice, he says this sentence. He says, I'll give you some advice, but God be with you, Moses. He said, I'm going to give you some procedural, I'm going to give you some strategy, but here's the most important strategy I can give you before I get into details, Moses, is God be with you. See, all the strategy in the world won't help if there's still a hole in you where God should be. Amen. You don't need a strategy, you need a Savior to rest in. I love the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Listen, if you're never in a place that's green, peaceful, calm, and still, you're probably not walking with the right shepherd. Amen. And you need to know that. It's important. See, here's the thing. So many people that want to stay busy all the time, they live in a constant desire that if I will live my life a certain way, I will eventually earn everyone's love. I'll earn the affection of others. I'll earn the love that God has given me. Let me tell you what the most beautiful thing about the gospel of Jesus Christ is that you can live you don't have to live your whole life in fifth gear trying to earn something because you can't. You can't earn it. Only He can provide it, and He does that willingly and freely to you. And the beauty of the gospel is that then frees you up to focus on the right things. And that's awesome. It's the beauty of what God gave us. And so here's the reality. If you want balance, you need margin. Why don't we do less? Why don't we buy cheaper cars? Why don't we schedule downtime? Because we have this insane fear that we're going to miss out on something. Amen. I can't turn down an invite to something. What will people think? Or what if we fall behind? I've got to have my kids even involved. My kids have got to do basketball and ballet and be on the honor roll. We're helping our kids destroy the margin in their life too. We've got to stop doing this because here's the reality of our culture. We as a people make more money now than we've ever made, and it's not enough. We have more devices that are supposed to maximize our time, and we have less time than we've ever had. We're afraid of not mattering. That's the issue. Reducing and squeezing all the margin out of your life is not a success strategy. It's a recipe for disaster. It's going to end badly. Because here's what we lie to ourselves and think. That we're eventually going to hit the finish line and then there's going to be some sort of release and it's all going to get easier. What's the lie there? There's no finish line. It's death. That's the end. You're not going to get to a point where you're going to go, I ran so hard and so ahead of everything else for so long that I finally reached a point where everything was easy for the rest of my life. It doesn't happen. Instead, we live our life comparing to everyone else, and we're trying to catch up to the people that we compare with, and what we realize when we get to them is that they're actually living with less margin than we have. Amen. You ran to chase to get a hold of something that has more captivity bound to it than where you started with. Amen. And even if you could sustain your pace, what about your wife, your husband, your kids? Your ministry. What if they can't? We all have limits. I want you to look at somebody next to you and just say, we all have limits. Some of y'all don't believe it yet. Here's the reality. You can only afford certain things. Man, I so wanted an amen right there. I'm like, listen, I'm so tired of the debt issue in our world and our culture. We can only afford certain things, amen? We can only do so much, amen? You know what? If you're one of those people, I'm about to offend somebody, get ready, okay? Pull your toes back, it's going to get ugly. If you've ever said and bragged about getting 4 hours only or less of sleep at night, shut up! That's not something to brag about. You're living an unhealthy lifestyle and using it as a source of pride? No. Take a nap. You're grumpy all the time. God has a plan for how we should live, and it's within limits. Why? Because we are created for relationship. See, God leads us to limits where relationships can thrive. God has a mandated thou shalt have margin statement in the Bible. Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days of each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. And on that day, no one in your household may do any work. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and He set it apart as holy. You go, well, I didn't get everything done. I got to get more stuff done. I got stuff on my to-do list. You need to stop and you need to take 24 hours off. You need to take a rest. He mandates things for our rest. He mandates things for us financially. Do you know in the Old Testament, God said, here's what I want you to do with your money. I want you to take 80% of it, and 80% of it you're used to live on. 10% of it you're to give to the temple, and 10% you're to give to the poor. We were supposed to live. God said, I want you to create a margin where you only live on 80% of your income. Can you imagine if you were able to afford to live right now on only 80% of your income? Some of y'all right now inside are going, hallelujah, praise Jesus. That would be amazing. But here's the deal. We're not. We're living on 110% of our income. We're going further into debt for most people every single month. God said, I have a margin for your finances. I have a margin for your rest. And we look at Him as if God is limiting us. But the truth is, if we could imagine a world where we lived in those margins, it would be for our good. It would be a blessing. It would be freeing in ways we can't imagine. See, Jesus had a priority, and He said it in Scripture. He says, I want you to do two things. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. And love what? Come on. Love your neighbor as yourself. He says, I want you to prioritize space for God and others, and then the rest is up to you. I want you to prioritize that, because here's the deal. If you get nothing else out of today's message, please get this. The Great Commission takes time. God said, I want you to go into all the world, make disciples of all men, teaching them to observe all things I've commanded you. And I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. And I want you to go into the world. Doing the Great Commission takes time. Squeezing all the... You know what happens when you do this? When this is the capacity of your life and you squeeze all the margin out of your life, do you know what you've squeezed out? You've squeezed out God. You've squeezed out God's plan for you. Do you know why? Because your relationships happen in the margin. Your relationships happen in the space. I meet a lot of people who used to go to church. And they don't go to church today. And you know what? It has nothing to do with theology. And it has nothing to do with belief systems. And most of the time, a lot of times it does, but a lot of times it doesn't have anything to do with being heard in church. They've simply destroyed all the margin in their life. And they said, something's got to go. And God went. Connecting with God's people went. But it's amazing in our life when we won't give God His due and His attention. It is amazing how God will use certain things to get our attention. For example, I've seen people that said there's no margin in our life, we have no space, we can't slow down. My dad was like that. My dad was full throttle his whole life until about 15 years ago he had a heart attack. And it's amazing the margin that a heart attack creates in your life. All of a sudden he was able to slow down. All of a sudden he was able to realize some things. I've watched people that said, no, we can't stop doing anything. And then all of a sudden, one of the two of this married couple looks at each other and says, I'm done, I'm out, there's nothing here. And all of a sudden you can create a lot of margin when you're trying to save the thing that you love. It's amazing. Listen, you're going to live within limits. You're either going to live within the limits that are enforced at the edge, or you're going to live within the ones that God invites you to live in for your blessing. Revelation 3:20 says this, behold, I stand at the door and knock, and if anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in to him and eat with him, and he with me. God wants to help create space in your life. God wants to help create balance in your life. And he's going, look, you need my advice, not just my salvation. You need to listen to me as Lord. And I'm going to stand here and knock. And I'm going to wait for you to let me into your calendar. I'm going to wait for you to let me into your free time. I'm going to wait for you to let me in to your finances. I'm going to stand at the door and knock. And if you wait until bankruptcy or illness or divorce, he'll still come in. But it could have been saved if you'd opened that door sooner. Because here's what's so great about finding margin in your life. If you create margin in your life, create means it's a proactive term. I'm going to have to actually make some changes and decisions to get there. But if you create margin in your life, God will squeeze the most amazing things into that space. You think about your life when you go through all the stuff. Usually it's those things that you don't have planned. They're not regular. They're not normal. It's all the stuff that happened to you and it almost was an accident. You didn't see it coming. It was never on your calendar. And all of a sudden it occurs in your life, and that's the story you tell over and over again. Because for a moment you opened up a space. And God said, oh, finally, let me stick something in there that's worthwhile. Thank you. And in that space, God squeezes in the most amazing stuff. See, here's what I figured out a little bit as I went through this. And like I said, this comes with a caveat that I'm not, this is a message I had to hear. Balance is not a percentage. That's what I kept reading all these people's like blogs and studies and everything over life balance. And it was weird. It's like none of the two were the same. It's a 50-50 this, it's a 40-60 this, it's a 70-30 this. If you can only find 5% of free time, that's really what's realistic. Do the most. I'm like, maybe we gotta stop thinking about this in terms of percentages. Think about it in terms of priorities. That what God is saying is that I need you to make a choice to create margin in your life, whatever that takes, whatever you want to give up. Some of you A-type personalities that want to lead everything, you need to stop doing some. Some of you that have the mental checklist constantly going and you can never have a moment to relax, your family can never have a moment to relax, stop. Don't sacrifice God's glory on the altar of a clean house 24 hours a day. Don't sacrifice God's glory on the altar of, I have to watch every single Ranger game that's ever on. Create some margin. And in that margin, God will do amazing things. And it's a choice. I want to tell you, we're not going to have the band come back up today. Instead, we're going to close a little bit differently. We want to just take a moment and just think about those areas of our life. Do a quick evaluation. So I want you to close your eyes for a moment. And I want you just to ask yourself the most important question, the one we asked earlier. God, what is it in my role as a husband? What is it in my role as a wife, as a child? What is it in my role as a student? What is it in my role at my job? What are the most important things that only I can do in my role? And I want you to come up with one or two things. And then I want you to ask the question, what does that leave off the list? Who could I hand these things to? Or if there's some of these things on my never-ending list that I just need to let die, can I have let them die? How can I create space in my life to do some things that God wants me to do? I can see God moving in our church, and we are very close to starting to work on some mission trips, both here and even internationally. Are you going to have margin for that? God may have a relationship that already exists in your life, and they desperately need to sit down one-on-one with somebody and experience the truth and the love of Jesus Christ. Are you going to have margin for that? Your kids are right now at the age that they're the most formative of their life, and yet they seem to always want to be gone. Are you going to be able to create margin, to find time to have space with them so they can grow up in the knowledge of God the way that they should? Is your marriage on the rocks, but you are terrified to admit it? Do you have the ability to stop and create margin so that God can step in and heal? Can we stop the fighting, stop the arguing, and just go, God, we're going to give you space here. We're going to seek you together. I don't know what it is for you, but I pray that God will challenge you to it. At some point, someone has to say that we are going to stop chasing everything and start pursuing God. God, we just want to pray this and trust this to you in Jesus' name. Amen.